Hi and welcome to Talk It Out. This is a show presented by UK Bike Fit. I'm Daniel, I'm an amateur triathlete and cyclist, and I do have my own YouTube channel. However, this is Dan. Dan's an actual professional. Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Professional, sure. Yeah, my name's Dan. I'm the owner of UK Bike Fit and I'm a physio and bike fitter, which I guess is where the professional thing was going. Right?
Exactly, yes. Okay. Not cyclist. So in today's video, we're going to talk about all things indoor training, aren't we? Because it is the season. Specifically, we're going to share our sort of tips and advice. So whilst we're not experts, we've done a fair bit of indoor training over the years. So hopefully this gives you some sort of value. If it does, at the time of recording, Dan is so close to 1,000 subscribers. Please can you press that subscribe button, tell everybody you know to watch this video. We'd be very grateful, wouldn't we?
We would. Thank you very much.
Okay. Right, Dan, you tasked me, or us collectively, to come up with 5 top tips. We're going to be around 5. How many did you come up with?
Well, you told me to come up with 2 to 3. So obviously 5 minutes ago I wrote down 4.
Okay, I've got 8, so I think we should be covered.
I thought you might.
Shall I go first then, seeing as I've got 8 and you've got 3?
Go on then, okay. Right. I think a lot of those will overlap though, but go on.
I don't know, mine are pretty niche.
Oh God.
Right, so I'm going to start firstly. All this is driven from how I actually get the indoor training done. Very often it's hard to put your shoes on, to get out to the garage or the shed or wherever you train. So all of mine are angled at actually getting the damn thing done. So I'm going to say firstly, make it fun and make it have a purpose. So for me, that can be things like, I don't know, I'm doing a Zwift race, or I'm doing a group ride with friends, or I'm even doing an event that isn't a real event, but it is just online. But for me, if I don't enjoy it, if it just sucks, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put it off. I'm going to delay it. I'm going to sack it off halfway through. So what are your thoughts about the level of fun of indoor training? Do you have fun indoor training? Or
No. I was going to say, what is your tip to make it fun?
Those things. So I would always say, use an online platform.
Okay.
I don't care if it's Zwift, if it's Ruby, engage with people, have some mental stimulation that isn't just staring at numbers.
Yeah, I think the majority of people are using an online platform. I use Zwift. I've used Trainer Road as well. I went back to Zwift, I think, because we started doing some racing on Zwift, so I wanted to get back on that platform. But Trainer Road also did the job. I think the thing that you brought up, like that, which is one of the things I've got down, is around giving it a purpose. So making sure that when you're getting on your bike to ride, you've actually got a goal for that session, whether it's a planned session for training purposes, or whether it's a race, or whether you're meeting up virtually with mates or riding with someone else, then at least it's got a purpose for riding. Personally, like, for me to give it a purpose, I need a session to do, like a training session. I think if you've not got that, I think a lot of people get on the turbo indoors and think, well, I ought to get on the bike. It's crap outside. I've not ridden for a couple of days, and they get on the bike and just don't know what to do, and then just end up riding and spinning their legs, and then thinking, well, what do I do? Like, how long have I ridden for? Oh, it's only been 10 minutes. Like, it just drags unless you've got that session to stick to and to go by.
Yeah, I wonder if those things are slightly different. Like, purpose is a bit different to just having fun. Just having fun sounds like you're going into it like, oh, I'll do anything. I think sometimes my purpose is to have fun, but that also gives me a plan. So if it's, I want to have fun and do a Zwift race, well, that's probably a high intensity. It's probably a VO2 max session, isn't it, really, in reality? So yeah. I get that about the objective and structure and stuff, but I think I always just try and focus on the fun, because I know when I focused on just doing intervals and structure and training, it doesn't happen as often, and I don't do as much.
Yeah.
And I feel like I come out the winter fitter, having enjoyed myself a lot. You mentioned we did a Zwift Racing League series last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
We got a backside handed tours.
And that was good. I can't say I've ever had fun riding on an indoor trainer. I can't. It's never been fun, but...
You've never been on a Monday night triathlon down 1 hour zone 2 Zwift ride?
That'd take me over the edge, I think.
Yeah.
But the fun bit isn't the thing, I don't think, for me. It's like, have I achieved something? Mm-hmm. And if I've achieved something by riding my bike on that evening or whenever, then yeah, it's still not fun. I've just ticked it off and it's sort of job done kind of thing. And having a platform just makes it more bearable, I think, rather than fun.
Okay, all right. Next.
Okay, well, the tying into that then, my first one that I wrote down was to actually have a training plan, which links into what I was saying about having a structure and having each session that, like, you're knowing what you're going to do when you get on the trainer. So you don't just sort of aimlessly ride and sack it off after 10 minutes because it's boring or you're cold or whatever. So having a training plan, having a structured session that's motivating for me, knowing that I've got a session to do, so I've got to get on and do it. But also over the longer term, thinking about a winter, getting to the end of that winter thinking, I've actually achieved some sort of fitness goal that I wanted to achieve, rather than just riding a bike and just turning the legs over. I want to actually make sure that I'm making improvements and getting fitter. So if you've got a training plan specific to your goals and your needs, then that helps with that.
So you specifically then, when you have a training plan for the winter, are you thinking about a target event in the spring, or are you thinking about, I just want to be fitter? How are you deciding what your output goal is for going through this plan? Yeah,
so maybe there'll be a goal. I mean, most of the racing I do or events that I do are sort of like towards the back end of spring, at least, and probably into the summer. So thinking about that in November, December is probably a bit early, but there'll at least be some part of my fitness that I want to work on, whether that's top end, whether it's endurance, whether it's sweet spot or whatever. I'll always work on like one specific aspect of fitness and do it for an extended period of time. So I get to the end of winter or whatever and think, I've actually made some fitness gains in that area of fitness that I wanted to make gains in. I think I've trained for a long time, like done sort of sessions like that, so I kind of know what I want to work on without someone telling me. But if other people are struggling with that, working with a coach or following a specific training plan that you can download off wherever is really useful. Obviously we have a coach within the business, Ewan, so I do pick his brains every now and again, and Ewan's put together some training plans that we have on the website that you can download and go and follow. But as long as you know what you're wanting to achieve and you know how to achieve it, I think you can do it yourself. But if you don't know that, you need someone really to tell you and show you what to do.
Just going to applaud the absolutely seamless integration there, Dan. I'm supposed to be the YouTuber on this table.
First rodeo.
No, it's not. But that makes a lot of sense. Okay. One of mine, I'm going to say experiment with fueling. And it doesn't necessarily make you any better at indoor training, but I think it gives you something else to think about, and it also prepares you better for the year to come. Mm-hmm. So hoping that you're going to have an event or even just riding outside for longer. What I mean by experimenting with fueling is when you're indoors and fueling goes wrong, you can just get off your bike and your kitchen is a metre away normally, or close by. So I've definitely done things like trying, not eating anywhere near enough on the bike. Where's my limit for doing an hour zone 2? Can I eat nothing? Can I eat 4 jelly babies? Like, what's the actual thing? And also the types of fuel, particularly when you're riding longer indoors, if you're that sort of sicko that rides for like 4 or 5 hours on the turbo, are you going to stick to just fluids? See how that is, how many times you need to pee during that time. Do you feel hungry, or can I try eating 10 gels during this long ride? Because if that's my plan for my event, then it's time to try it. I think it's a really safe space because you don't want to sabotage a session, but you have got the opportunity to try things that might not work. It's no fun being out in the Peak District near us, is it? And having bonked and being empty. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Whereas indoors, you've got time to salvage it, haven't you? So that'll be my thoughts about experimenting with fueling. But is that something you've ever done indoors or not?
I haven't, mainly because I'm not that sicko that will sit on the trainer for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like say within an hour session or even an hour and a half is probably the longest session I do or indoors. You can sort of get away with anything, like whether you're fleet fueled or not. So yeah, I've never used, any time that I've tried different fueling strategies or tried different products has always been on a really long ride. So which I'd do outdoors, I wouldn't do indoors. So yeah, I've never, but it's a good idea to train, if you are looking at trying some sort of different nutrition, to train your gut and just see if it's going to agree with you or not, because a lot of people suffer with
even something as silly as, if you're doing a tempo or sweet spot workout, and if your event is requiring you to put out that sort of power, just practicing eating and drinking at that sort of time. And when you're doing those things, is different to, I'll eat when I'm recovering in between an interval. Try eating and drinking when you're doing your interval, because that's what you're going to be doing in your event, isn't it? So yeah, definitely experiment with fueling. What's next on your list?
Again, segueing really nicely into my next one was not trying to ride the same amount of hours that you would normally outdoors. So if through summer, I don't know, maybe your long ride would be 4 or 5 hours. Don't try and sit on the turbo for 5 hours. Like, it's not pleasant. It's
Why not?
First of all, a 5-hour ride outside, you're not going to be pedaling for 5 hours. You're going to be freewheeling here and there. You're going to be in and out the saddle, up the climbs, down the descents, freewheeling. The effort is very different compared to when you sat on a trainer constantly putting power through the pedals. So it's just not feasible to, unless you've dropped the power right down, which most people wouldn't. It's not feasible to do the same amount of effort indoors than you would outdoors. It's very different. The other thing is, it's like I say, it's just not enjoyable or comfortable for most people. Which we'll come on to that later. That's my next one. But it's just not. You don't gain anything extra from doing those sorts of 5-hour rides. For the most people, rather than doing some sort of shorter session, maybe some higher intensity intervals or something like that. And again, I just think it's not, going back to the first point, which was making it fun. That's not fun. 5 hours inside on a turbo.
I do think, like, whenever we go to, if we've been on a cycling trip, like we did to Calpe earlier this year, you look at a 6-hour ride on paper, it isn't, is it? It's particularly when you've got long climbs, it's long descents, you might be descending for 20 minutes, half an hour. Yeah. Where we ride around here, yes, there's up and downs, but it's more rolling, so you're often able to be on the pedals for longer, and you descend in for 2 minutes, but you climb in for 15, that sort of ratio. Yeah. So yeah, I get that. I do think there is a space for, particularly in my own training and through weaknesses I've identified, is that I've never performed well on a long sustained effort, because I think the training we do around here is on, off, on, off. So when I train indoors and want to do a long ride, that's a brilliant opportunity for me to check in with how am I doing at this long sustained effort, requirement for my events I'm going to do. And am I flagging at 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours? So I think it presents an opportunity to some people, perhaps who live in hilly areas, to do a different type of riding. But I think I've always worked on the rule of thumb, and this is an old coach that told me this, that like roughly 25% extra time outdoors is the same indoors. I might be butchering that, but essentially if you're going to do, I don't know, 2 hours.
That's total myth.
No, the opposite way around. So as in, like, if you can do 25% less indoors, and it's the same as outdoors.
Loads of people say that. It's like, oh, if you do an hour indoors, it's the same as whatever outdoors.
Not in this for me. Why is that?
It's just not. It's not the same, because it's not the same effort. Like when you're riding indoors and you are on the pedals constantly, you normally your body temperature is normally higher because you're indoors. There's less ventilation. You're taking less oxygen. Like, it's just a totally different effort. So to compare that effort to a whatever length effort outdoors, it's just not. They're totally different things. So. I think volume.
I think they're quite similar.
No, like if you're pedaling, 2 hours of pedaling is more than 1 hour of pedaling, right? Yeah. But so if you do 1 hour indoors, why should that be equivalent to 2 hours outdoors? It's only because it feels harder. That's why people think, oh, I feel like I've done like a 2 hour ride because it feels harder to me. That's the feeling I associate with a longer ride outdoors. So I'm going to say I've done the same amount of pedaling. You haven't.
I don't always think indoors feels harder. I think because especially of how you and I train sometimes, where you're just looking at the power number, like people say, oh, climbing's difficult. I'm like, well, it's not, because I'm riding at the same power as what I would do on the flat. It's just I'm riding up a hill. So with indoors, I always think, I know that if you look at the power distribution or whatever, you've pedal for an hour consistently. If I go out and do a Wednesday night club ride, I can see that I've ridden it in zone 2. I've only actually been pedaling for an hour and a half of it. So I do think that the indoors does, like, you can translate that. I don't know.
But like for like.
Yeah. Oh no, it's not the same. It's similar.
Multiply it and go, I've done 5 hours indoors this week, so that's probably about 50 hours. No, but
I would, as you say, I wouldn't chase the total volume that we're able to do in the summer when we're out on a long Sunday ride in that indoor mileage. But I do think it's easier to justify not chasing that volume, because I think it's a higher value. There's no wasted time, there's no freewheeling, there's no, like, it's fully efficient for that time you're on there, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree with that. Don't try and do the same amount of volume that you do outdoors, because like I say, it's not the same. It's not the same effort.
Okay. Mine sort of like, these are very similar, aren't they? But mine sort of tags onto that. And mine was about the conditions that you're riding in indoors. And this completely depends on what your setup is at home. I know some people train in sheds, some people are putting a turbo in the kitchen, some people have got a garage, some people have got fabulous pain caves converted and so on. Dan's counting down the days till his eldest moves out, and then there's going to be a fabulous pain cave there, isn't it?
A long time to go.
Yeah. So I want to pay specific attention to moderating temperature. Now, how I do this is I have a door open to outdoors, I've got a fan, I wear a sweatband, got a towel. I really try and think about when you're starting your ride, that's the coolest you're going to be. You're going to get warmer. Even if it's a cold day and you're training in a shed, you're going to get hot. The more comfortable you can be, the less excuses there are to look for during the session, the more likely it is that you're going to finish your ride essentially. And over the last couple of weeks, it's been below zero quite a lot of evenings. I've got toe covers and gloves on the turbo, but it feels a bit overkill. But I know that when I'm 40 minutes in, 45 minutes in, and my hands are hurting a bit, these are cold.
Definitely overkill.
Yeah, but it's not, because I'm comfortable and I get to the end of that ride without being in discomfort. And I think when you get in discomfort, it's easy to sack it off. So I'd definitely think about how you can make your environment at home the most comfy it can be. So if you're setting a turbo up somewhere, can you get it near a window? So then when you do get hot, you can just crack a window. Can you get a fan to where you are? Get a decent towel. And I think the biggest hack is, and you've got one as well, a sweatband. I think they're so good from the turbo, just for not having sweat running in your eyes. Sometimes you're not that hot, but you just get a bit of sweat running down. It makes you feel hot, and then you're wiping it with your hand and you're still sweaty and all of that. So
they are good. I sweat loads as well, so that is useful. But I think the ventilation is the one thing that people don't necessarily think about. Obviously, most people have a fan, but if you're indoors with no natural air coming in, that air's just getting recycled. It might be blowing in your face, it might be making you feel cooler, but you're not increasing the oxygen levels in the room. I'm picking this out of thin air now, but there was a study done on like room ventilation when people were indoor training, and there was the carbon dioxide levels in the room rose and oxygen levels decreased. And
so we have at work, we have carbon dioxide monitors which measure basically how dirty the air is. And you can sit in a meeting and you can see this thing going up and up. When you crack a window, you see it go down again. So it's exactly the same as that. Not so much of a problem when you just sat chatting, other than for spreading viruses, but when you're trying to use oxygen as to do some stuff and there's less of it, it's difficult, isn't it? So
exactly. So definitely open a window, open a door. Don't just have a fan. Make sure there's some sort of natural air coming in.
Okay. You said you got one comfort related. I've got one comfort related, so I feel like yours might.
You know what it's going to be. I can't sit here. Sit here and not talk about bike fit. Get your turbo bike or your winter bike or whatever you're riding most fitted through winter. The amount of people that will only get a bike fit on their best summer bike that only gets ridden 5 times a year when the weather's nice in the UK is ridiculous. And then the winter bike will get neglected. They'll try and transfer some measurements and make sure, maybe the crank lengths are different or bar width's different and saddle's different, but it'll do because it's my winter bike. No, you spend hours on that bike in the turbo normally, probably way more hours on it than you would your best bike. So if you're not getting that bike fitted, it's a total waste. And the amount of people that suffer with comfort problems more when they're indoor riding versus outdoor is massive, because indoor you're static, you're not moving around as much, you're not cornering, so you're not distributing any pressure on the saddle, you're not in and out of the saddle as much. So the pressure that you have got when you're riding is just totally static. So if there are any issues with the fit, then they're going to get multiplied when you're indoor riding, because you're just in that one position for a long period of time. So it's a big telltale sign if you're getting comfort issues when you're indoor riding, but maybe you can get away with it outdoors. You've got a problem with your fit. Get it sorted on your indoor bike, because indoor cycling is not comfortable anyway. So anything you do can make it better. It's going to be an improvement. The other thing with comfort and indoor bikes, and this is a big thing that we find a lot of people have issues with, is making sure that the bike is level, because different turbos will hold the rear axle at different heights, and that might not necessarily be at the same level to your front axle. So your bike actually might be effectively on an incline or a decline, and then people end up with all sorts of problems. So take a tape measure from the floor to the rear axle and make sure that that measurement is exactly the same from the floor to the front axle, and then your bike's level as it should be.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, perhaps more than we think, might only have the one bike or be trained on the bike they ride in the summer on a turbo in the winter or whatever. So I think gold standard, ride the same bike, right? You know your fit's the same, you know you're going to be comfy, but pay particular attention to that. Are you going downhill or uphill without intending to?
Yeah.
And I think also if you do have another bike that is either set up on a turbo, or maybe you've got a watt bike or a kicker bike or whatever it is, check it, because my knee niggle flared up last year when my seat post had slipped on my indoor bike and I hadn't noticed, and because it was over a period of time I just slipped until all of a sudden it wasn't quite right and then it caused an injury. I'd have noticed on my bike, but because it was just the indoor bike and that was the only one I was riding, it just passed me by. If I'd put a bit of tape on it or something, so I'd just check it, make sure that it's right. And if somebody does have a different indoor bike or an indoor training bike, they can go some way transferring measurements, right? They're perhaps not going to get it perfect, 100%. But they can definitely do saddle height, probably the most important, and then reach and stuff. It's worthwhile giving it a go. Are there any apps or anything people can use that you know of, or is it just a case of measuring?
Just tape measure.
Right. Okay. I'm trying to think about
old school.
Trying to think about Gen Z.
Gen Z. Get a tape measure from your granddad.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
My only comment about indoor comfort was chamois cream. I know you don't use chamois cream, do you? Do you not use it at all, not even indoors?
No.
You're missing out.
Definitely not.
Okay, well I do, and I use cowwater cream, as some people might already know. But I definitely use more indoors because I get sweatier. Even if you've got a fan blaring at you, your gooch area is going to be warmer, so you're going to sweat more than you sweat the same, but you're going to get hotter and sweatier than you would do outside. So I definitely give that some thought. The other one I want to talk about, Dan, have you got any more on your list? Or?
I'm out.
Okay, right.
Ventilation was my last one, but we're already on there.
Right, I'll clear up. Actually getting the training done, I find having a set time to start makes you get on the bike. When we have a club ride or when you go in and meeting a mate, you're meeting somebody at a certain time. It's too easy when you finished work to get home, sit down, or I'll have tea, or I'll just do this. I'll sit. Say to yourself, my ride starts at 6 o'clock tonight, and if I don't get on the bike then, my mate's going to leave me. I know it's imaginary, but set yourself a time.
All your mates are imaginary.
Basically, yeah. Join a group ride if you use an online training platform. Give yourself a target and make yourself stick to it so that it actually happens at that time. And then the other thing about setups is I'm a big fan of removing barriers to training. So if every time you train, you've got to get your bike, take the wheel out, put it on a turbo, get a towel out, make your drinks, all of that, you're less likely to get on the bike because there's just that much in between it happening. Maybe some people are super motivated and that's not a problem. But I always try and keep a spare towel in the garage so that whenever I'm taking a towel, if there's already one there, I'm just replacing the next one. If for example, this week on Monday, I took 2 bottles of juice in the garage. It's been freezing cold all week. I had half the first one on Monday night, half on Tuesday night, finish the other one on Wednesday. I've not had to make drinks each night. It's probably growing mold a bit, but I'm not less barriers. I'm lucky enough to have a kicker bike, so I've got my bike set up, ready to go. Walk in, turn it on, shoes on. God, just within what you can do, remove as many barriers as you can. I know some people, I see some cool setups where they've got a turbo and they can almost fold the bike up against the wall, so they have them in dining rooms or living rooms, and with permission from the people that live in the house, then able to just fold their bike up, and it doesn't take up too much space in the room. So remove barriers.
I know we spoke about having one bike and just riding it through summer and then putting it on the turbo in winter, but I would 100% not do that for that reason, because it's just too much effort to take wheels on and off. It's the same bike I'm riding outside and inside. I'm constantly having to swap things over. Maybe the chain line's not the same, so gears click and the cassettes, things like that. Get yourself, you don't need anything for an indoor bike. A cheap frame, that's all you need, with some cheap front wheel. If you've got a direct drive turbo, you don't need a back wheel, and you're away in a group set, obviously, with a group set. But you get something that's absolutely, you don't mind absolutely nailing, because it's not going to get much use. You don't need a bike with brakes or anything fancy on it. It just needs to have a frame that you can sit on and a group set that you'll use with your turbo.
My old turbo bike, I sweated onto the headset that much that it seized. The bars wouldn't even turn, but it did the job.
This is another thing. Clean your indoor bike, because
we take that bar tape off.
The amount of times. Everyone thinks that you don't ride it outside, it's not getting dirty, so why do I need to clean it? all of your sweat that's dripping onto the front end of the bike will just deposit and corrode all that metal. So if it's the bike you're riding outside, you'll take it out in the summer, all of that corrosion will have taken place under the bar tape all through winter. As soon as you get out of the saddle and sprint off the drops, your bars snap, and disgusting. The amount of indoor bikes that come in for bike fits and I need to move the shifters.
Saving mine up for you.
Start taking the bar tape off and this smell enters the room and you think, oh my God, and underneath it's just all sweat.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, the bigger problem is the corrosion, isn't it? Because then they ride it in the spring having not took the bar tape off and something snaps. That's a problem.
And if you do sweat a lot, put a towel over the front of your bike so that when you do sweat, it drips onto the towel and not the bike.
Yeah. My last one, Dan, is about online platforms, and this show is in no way affiliated with any online platforms. And equally, I'm not suggesting you should commit fraud. However, online platforms I know have risen in price this year. I think I mainly use Zwift, but I think they're worth every penny for what they offer in terms of the mental stimulus to training. And I would say, if you can't afford to use an online platform, these things are registered to email addresses. You know, email addresses are free to create. There's plenty of free. Ruvi, you get a 30-day free trial if you use any one of the 20 influencers that work with code. And Zwift, you get a so many kilometers free trial, don't you? So make use of those things because genuinely, I think there's a massive benefit from them.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many times I've stayed on the turbo, even this week, 15 minutes extra because I'm finishing a route to get a badge that means nothing, but actually it makes me do a bit more. So
yeah, 100%. I think if you're training without one, you've got some god level self-motivation, self-discipline.
I used to be coached by a guy who was a great time trialer, but all he did was time trialing, and all his training was numbers based. He wouldn't do any online training. He was just like on a watt bike and didn't even listen to music because in a time trial you don't have music. And I on one hand I applaud that, on the other hand I'm like, oh my God, that must be miserable. But you know, people are motivated by different things, aren't they? So yeah, I think in a nutshell, that's what we've got to share about indoor training. But if you've got any thoughts or anything you know makes indoor training either more pleasant for you or just get it done, let us know in the comment section down below, and hopefully some people will see some benefit from it.
Yeah. And if you're looking for some winter training or some coaching, head onto the website, have a look at our training plans and download them if you want some motivation through winter.